Welcome to WWT Live Wednesday edition. We got some big news for you guys today. We're going to be talking about the NXT fallout and what's to come. We got a couple birthdays to celebrate and some very interesting comments from Seth Rollins on the recent Out of Character podcast. That and so much more. Keep it locked.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.
Happy Wednesday, beautiful people. Welcome to Women's Wrestling Talk Live Wednesday edition. I'm your host, Cedric Welton, today, and I'm not alone, actually, I should say. I got a special guest with me. Mr. DJ Chuck will be joining me talking all this news. Chuck, how you doing today?
What's going on, Cedric? What's good with you, brother?
Man, hump day. Long week.
Yeah.
We got to enjoy a short week last week. I'm feeling the full engagement of this whole week this week.
Yeah, man, it's going. The hump is like,
man,
the hump is big right now. The hump is like running up a big mountain right now. But we gonna make it, as Jada Kidd said, man. We feeling good though.
Yeah, good. We'll get through it. So we got a lot to talk about today. Most notably, I want to start with doing a little bit of NXT fallout. We had a really special NXT last night. Call it the Judgment Day takeover, if you would. I meant to make that reference. Now, this was the episode where the Judgment Day came and kind of left their Monday Night Raw mark on the takeover brand. We've been seeing a lot of crossover with the main roster talent going back down to NXT as of late. This was just another example. And NXT, I mean, I'm an NXT loyalist by heart, but they've really been doing their thing from top to bottom. We're talking about separate storylines away from the titles. The title pictures are getting a lot of rub. What did you think of last night's NXT? I actually just finished it earlier today.
You know, man, for me, I've been in and out of NXT. I'm so much of a black and gold guy, and it took me, I kind of went away from it when we got to the 2.0, but I'm slowly getting back into it. You know, you look at like Carmelo Hayes and what Braun Breaker's doing, and they're taking the brand in the right direction. And I think also it's not just about finding the newer stars, but I feel like, you know, veterans are getting their new shine. They're reinventing themselves. You look at what happens, especially right now with Baron Corbin. He needed a reboot badly. He needed a fresh coat of paint badly. So I think these crossover shows are healthy. It's not just from a rating standpoint, but from a storyline standpoint. It gets the younger stars more comfortable with the wrestlers on the main roster. But as long as it doesn't become like a subsidiary show where there's too much main roster influence, NXT still has got to have its own titles, its own storylines. I'm still trying to figure out. I know they unified the women's tag team belts. Mm-hmm. So I'm not the biggest fan of unifying NXT and main roster belts. I feel like they should be their own, but you know, we have to see how that plays out. But I'm really impressed with it's like they found a good medium. They're trying to still find a good medium between the black and gold brand that we all love and kind of what is the remains of 2.0. So shouts at everybody down there, and of course the Heartbreak Kid running the show down there.
Yeah, I mean, NXT under HBK has actually been cooking as of late since they kind of got that 2.0 stank off them a little bit.
Yeah,
you kind of see kind of a mesh of the new and young up and coming talent like Kalani Jordan, who's kind of taking on that Sol Ruka role before Sol got hurt. You're seeing storylines develop like with Gallus and the Don and Stacks, and just a lot of things really developing. One thing that we're going to see is more main roster influence going forward. Like we saw Dom challenge Wesley for the North American title that'll take place next week.
Right.
One thing that really stood out to me, and I've talked about this in other shows, is with Carmelo Hayes, his appearances on the main roster, having people come down and challenge him, most notably Corbin. Now it looks like he's on a crash course with Finn. I want to know, and if you're in the chat, you can chime in on this too. Is it much ado about nothing that last night in the tag team match, Finn Balor pinning Carmelo Hayes for the second time? I'll have a choice there that he ate that pin.
Yeah, and you know what? When he came out to Raw and they went, like I said, I've been in and out. I'm not going to sit here and BS for the people watching. I've been in and out of NXT, trying to get back into it, and I've heard and I've seen clips of Carmelo Hayes' work, But that match with Finn made me a believer. I'm like, yo, this dude is the truth. I'm Cammy the late pass. That dude is the truth. So you're right. I don't know how much of a character building thing being for him to eat the pin twice against the same main opponent. I don't know. Maybe they got something down the line where he's going to get a big payoff from it. My big thing about using main roster with NXT, especially like when Braun Breaker and Seth Rollins went out for the title, do you think we're going to see a shock one of these matches? There's got to be stakes to where you're looking at an NXT superstar and you look at a main roster superstar to go, there's going to be no title. There's no consequence to this match. It's going to be a great match. It's going to put this person on the map, but is there going to be a consequence? I think at a certain point, if they're going to keep doing these crossovers, there has to be a consequence. There has to be a shock. Someone has to win big. I don't know who or when that's going to happen, but I think for these crossovers to mean even more than just ratings boost, there has to be shockers in storyline mode.
It's a good take because, I know now we got after the number one contenders match between Braun Breaker and Ilya Dragunov. We know Dragunov is the number one contender for Melo. That'd be, to me, kind of the first, I don't want to call it the first test because he rematched against Braun initially. But we already know Braun was kind of like 1 foot out the door, might go to main roster, but now he's kind of in a different groove. But they've been meshing Melo with so many main roster characters. I feel like they haven't anointed anybody else to be in that class just yet, which is why we have so much crossover. Finn being, I think, two-time NXT champion, kind of the house that he built,
right,
is a real credible challenger. So I can see that, and I can see that happening because they tried to tease the dissension with Judgment Day, much ado about nothing, but Finn is a very credible challenger. And I think him him picking up 2 pins against Melo, natural storytelling there.
Right. And there's two things that you said, that was very important there in that. Well, first of all, let's go back to shockers. We forget about Ziggler. Ziggler was the champion for what? A month and a half before Braun Breaker took the title off him. So that was a great example of a main roster guy coming in and trying to build a new guy up. But Ziggler's always been good for that. We always know Ziggler's been the guy. He's like we're talking about The Miz last week. He's one of those go-to guys of, I need you to do this job, build this guy up, and he's a good worker for it. But the thing that has to, I lost my train of Happy Wednesday. I lost my train of thought. I had a good point too. It was cooking, and it fell right off the plate as I was trying to serve it. Oh my God.
It'll come back. Shout out to Nikki in the chat joining us.
Hey, Nikki.
She mentioned that Rhea should defend her title at Great American Bash. Who should she defend it against? Should it be like Roxanne? Should it be like Blair Davenport?
Roxanne would be the number one. Okay, now I remember. This is connecting what you just asked here. What is the next NXT class to move up? No one has really been like, if you go 5-6 years ago, you can go, that person's ready, that person's moving up, that person's moving up. I don't think there's not a handful of NXT superstars that are ready to fully move up yet. I think this class is going to stay there for a minute, and they need it. You don't want to over fill the main roster and you got people kicking it in catering when you can just go down to NXT and get your reps in, get on TV and better yourself. So I'm with you, man. Like, besides Braun Breaker and Carmelo Hayes and who else can you think is ready? Who you think is ready right now that could possibly move up? Who else?
I don't know. And that's what I'm saying. I don't know if we're in a situation where people have to move up so much right now.
Right.
With building it kind of as going back to those black and gold days, there's just the opportunity for so many different crossovers. So your casual fans who watch main roster only can know these guys when they're ready. I can see Chase U has been over. I wasn't a believer at first, but it's so over now. Thea Hell is one of my favorite characters. I can see some type of crossover with Chase U versus Alpha Academy. There's just so many opportunities to have more entertainment when you have this going on. But as far as people on the main, I can see I don't think Stratton actually admitted herself that she wasn't ready to go. Maybe Ivy Nile can go up and work an angle there since the Creeds are on their way. It it just takes time. I think it takes more character development. I think that's what they're doing right now.
Right. Right. And you know what? The other thing we have to keep in mind, the black and gold era was full of so many indie darlings. So many people who were ready before they got there. And then their time at NXT kind of, shined up the diamond a little bit more before they went up to their main roster, or maybe they went to AEW or so forth. A lot of the people in NXT right now are PC projects. They started at the PC and they're still learning their way around the ropes. So they may need a little more time. So that's kind of, that's the way they wanted to kind of repackage, rebuild NXT like that. So I think that's why we haven't seen too many call-ups as of late, because it really is a developmental period for the brand right now.
A lot of interesting points in the chat. Nikki's saying that JC and GG can both easily be on the main roster. I tend to agree. I would just hope that if they were to do that, that we would kind of get far enough along to where we forget that they separated, because we need tag teams. And they were probably one of the best tag teams that could have easily meshed with the main roster. Boza's saying that it's frustrating that Finn has 2 pinfalls over the champ, but maybe nothing comes of it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's an indictment on Melo at all, just his challengers in NXT. It might shake things up if Finn were to just take the strap for a minute, similar to what they did with Braun and Dolph a year ago.
Right. But he's got to get one to make this even a viable rivalry. He can't go 3-0 on him. He's got to get. So you're suggesting he can go 3-0 and just maybe he chases them, like he loses the trap
underdog story. So remember when Melo and Apollo Crews had the 2 out of 3 falls match, and then he got 2 off top.
Right.
It almost felt very awkward, but it allowed you to say, all right, this is a different level. Melo's a different level than Apollo Crews. So it could be something like that just shocks you on face value, and then you just got to roll with it and be like, all right, this is your comeback story.
Right. But we all can agree that Carmelo Hayes is one of the, if there was somebody ready to go right now, he would go, but they need him down there without question.
Absolutely. Good point from Boza. HBK might not want to let more talent go than he did. The draft saw so many people go most recently, so they got to keep as many people back. So also the fact that this NXT last night drew so many ratings in that it's showing that the formula is working to have main roster talent go down for a spell. Boza saying that Rhea should be focusing on her women's world championship reign, and creative hasn't made it that great. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
We talked about this on Monday, I believe. Who on Raw do you elevate to challenge Rhea? It might extend the reign a little bit to have somebody for NXT challenge for a bit, just to showcase the title on all 3 brands, just to showcase Rhea a little bit more.
Right. I mean, you got to even go back to her story, her dropping the title to Charlotte. Even though the payoff in the long run with their incredible Mania match and where she is now, it was great long-term booking, but I don't know if that was always the plan with her in Charlotte. They just looked at it and went, oh, this seems like a good idea. Maybe it was in the cards all the time. Maybe it wasn't. But, I don't think Rhea Ripley benefits in giving anyone at NXT a full title shot right now. I don't think either or it helps. I think anybody that looks at a match with her and anybody in NXT like, oh, this is going to be a squash.
Maybe, but I mean, I know there's some people backstage that are really high on Roxanne. You saw a lot of main roster appearances from Roxanne. I think she was in the most recent Royal Rumble. So that could be something where it benefits both parties.
I wouldn't mind seeing that, but I don't see Rhea dropping that title anytime soon. I don't see it.
Oh, no, of course not. I don't think so either.
But her and Roxanne would be a great match. There's no denying that. And I need Booker T on commentary for that match too. Oh, shucky ducky quack quack.
I'm ready to move on from NXT personally, but we don't have to. We don't have to dive into that here. We don't have to ruin this Wednesday.
All right, next topic. Next topic.
All right, what else we got?
Let's see what else. Next topic we got is Seth Rollins on his out of character interview speaks on Roman Reigns. Of course, with these out of character interviews and especially with a lot of Rollins's interviews, you have to ask yourself, is he working or is he shooting? So of course he kind of takes shot at Reigns, and of course there's been criticism about the new World Heavyweight title being a quote unquote secondary title versus the undisputed. What is it? The undisputed WWE World Man. What is the full undisputed WWE World Heavyweight title? What do they call it nowadays?
I don't know. I just know Roman's still carrying around 3 belts.
Yeah. Why? I thought the whole point of giving him the gold belt was for Heyman only to wear one strap now. I thought that was the point of that.
I can't call it. And you bring up a good point. Is Seth kind of leaning into the bit a little bit with his comments? But he said some interesting things, man. He said, like, and here's a quote. He said, here's the thing. If Roman was doing what I'm doing, there wouldn't be a need for a secondary championship. There wouldn't be a need for another World Heavyweight title on Raw because we would have somebody who was doing those things. It would give direction to the characters on the show and the show itself because of the route he has chosen and what he wants to do with his schedule, his title reign, and not what I'm doing. Somebody has to fill that void. That don't sound like he really. That don't sound like in character to me. It sounds like there's some truth to that, and it's like he's just being very honest about, like, hey, this is what Roman wants to lessen his schedule. And in the past, he said, like, yo, he's earned that. He's earned that. Anybody would do it if they can, but he's kind of like letting people know the real. It's like, hey, Roman is the one that put all this stuff in a bind at the end of the day.
Yeah, and then part of me is like, you gotta, we all know where they came from. We all know their history. They're brothers in arms. They rolled it. That's why I'm like, is he shooting or is he working here? So, but even if he's shooting or depending on who he's shooting or working, he has a point. Like, booking to put all the belts on Roman puts creative in a bind. When do you pull the trigger? How do you pull the trigger? Do you slowly, like, I guess the way they're looking at it is they're slowly, stripping down the bloodline empire as we kind of see it, and not just one big fall off as we thought it was going to be at WrestleMania. Seth is known to be a company man. We all know that. He's going to be the rah-rah guy in the locker room. He was one too. He felt like he should have been in the title picture all the time. He's just one of those guys. Like, I work my ass off backstage. I'm here for the company, whoever they needed. I should be in the mix all the time. And like it or not, Seth is good with the politicking. Let's just keep it a buck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's good at it. He's real good at it. And half the battle sometimes of being in the mix with titles is good with the politicking. Like, it's just part of the wrestling business. But there's no denying it because his character work this is one of the best versions, maybe the best version of Rollins we've had. That can be argued. Shout
out to JD in the chat. That might be me. I think it just goes off on the hour or something like that. But
that's not me. I'm in a studio that's all. That's not me. But shout out to JD. No, there's no denying, like, it puts creative in a bind. Gone are the days of, champions there every Monday, every Thursday. It just, we don't have that right now. You can call it the Brock Lesnar effect, because Lesnar was really one of the first guys to kind of implement that halftime schedule with the major championship on his waist. The other side of that argument is it makes Roman a special attraction. That's why I guess what booking's been the case they've been making, because every time the bloodline came into somebody's city, or as the Usos will say, the bloodline is now in your city. The whole place will go crazy and they will sell a lot of tickets. Can't argue against that part of it, but from a creative standpoint, he has legitimate points. As far as the World Heavyweight title being a secondary title, it could be said as that. That's why the whole thing about Cody Rhodes challenging for this would never happen. It doesn't make any sense. He has to, if he's going to win it, it's got to be against Roman, and it's got to be for that belt. But they needed a working champion. We've heard the storyline before. Triple H's like, you deserve a champion that's going to be here every Monday. How many times have we heard that before? Lesnar got it. Anybody else who's part-time with the belts got it before. So, long story short, do I think where there's smoke, there's fire? Maybe, but he could be working. But I believe that I think it's wrong to make that a secondary title when he's making it the title worth something right now, and he's had great matches for it.
So there's another quote here that's interesting, and I want to pose this to the chat. He said it's hard for characters to evolve and advance. We don't have stories, and a lot of our stories are based around levels. He said he's creating one for Monday nights, creating a top tier level. That was the hand we were dealt after unifying the titles. That's where we're at, and we're making the best of what we can. So far, I'd say it's made for good matches and good stories, and we're just getting started. So he's kind of leaning into the fact that they needed a title. But with Seth defending so much, and this is a question for everybody, does that kind of dilute the value of the title after what we've seen with Roman? It's kind of on a spectacle. It gets defended ever so often. But if you're defending it so much, doesn't that dilute the value of the title that you're so eloquently trying to elevate?
I just had a thought that this heavyweight title is more to me. It sounds like a workhorse title. It feels like the Intercontinental title, like what it was in the 90s versus the World Heavyweight title, let's say during the Ruthless Aggression era when Triple H, carried that and Shawn and et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I mean, you can ask that question in that, a championship match is supposed to be special, especially the main title. Someone getting a title shouldn't be every Monday. Let's all agree on that. There should be some kind of special vibe to it. There should be someone who earned it, not just a random "you're a coward," defend it right now, or an open challenge. No more open challenges, people. Like, let's chill out on the open challenges here. We know you're a fighting champion. We know you're a fighting champion. Just make all your matches special when the title's on the line. So to answer your question, it could. So they have to be careful with how they book it.
Interesting take. Seth being a company guy to make USA happy. JD says that if this were MMA, Seth's title would be the equivalent of an interim title. So that's what I'm saying, and that's what I agree with. It's a real title in theory, and what we see on Monday night. Sure, you have to have a guy in the main event spot, but with Seth defending it so much, and then the tier of challengers underneath, what we've seen so far, with it being Finn, I guess just everybody saying it doesn't make sense for Cody to challenge for it. Like, it doesn't, and it's still early in the game. Of course, it'll lend its credibility, but the real title still feels like it's on SmackDown because this one's being challenged for so much.
Right. And then we also got to keep in mind, they always say it's not the championship, but it's how that person makes the championship. Roman's storyline, the bloodline, those storylines are once every decade. You get a behemoth of a storyline like that. It's not just the belt, it's the story that goes behind it. So Seth is not just fighting against, he's trying to he's trying to compete against one of the biggest storylines in the last 20 years of wrestling. It's not just, and he made that belt. The WWE title, of course, is the most important title in pro wrestling. There's no doubt about that. But it's the weight of the winning streak, the winning both belts, the story of the bloodline itself. The stakes are higher. There's no high stakes for Seth's belt yet because it just got there. So
I have an interesting question because
go for it.
Nikki brings up a very interesting point that Roman is a champion holder, Seth is a champion, and we got wind of, I think where Survivor Series has been held at this year, and it was notably not Survivor Series War Games again. So I'm curious, if we run the whole brand supremacy thing back and these two have to face off with each other, and we know these guys like working with each other, they want to do like a storyline where they actually have the ultimate rivalry at WrestleMania one day. If we ever got to a point to unifying the titles again, would you feel like the playing field would be level? Would you feel like Seth would be on that level with this title of Roman?
The title itself, obviously not, but I think their history in the Shield would lend to the story. And you would have to it can't be a non-title. You got to put everything on the line. I don't see, obviously, because Paul Heyman has been messing with everybody. He's like, wouldn't that title look good on Roman Reigns? They wouldn't give him all the gold, or maybe he puts one of the belts on. I don't know. There has to, again, it could be an exhibition match. There's got to be consequences. But hopefully, they've teased it for a while. They went out at the Royal Rumble. What was it, about a year and a half, about 2 years ago? They went out the Royal Rumble for the title. That's when he came in, in the Shield attire. So they're gonna cross paths eventually again. I just don't know when yet. But it's all about the championship is made by the person that makes it, and I think Seth is determined to make that World Heavyweight title mean something, and I think he's done a great job so far. So
this is a hell of a ratio right here. If he defends against Jay at SummerSlam, it'll be potentially his 30th title defense in 1,070 days. But that doesn't seem like to me, that doesn't seem like a small number. I
Right.
don't know. Maybe it's just me. It doesn't seem like a very small number.
But see, now that Roman is starting to crack, starting to lose, now there's danger involved. Now the question is what's gonna happen. Now it's like, oh, it's a given. Like when he fought Sami Zayn in Montreal, even though there was like, they're not gonna do it. Are they really gonna do it? That match was excellent. And it was still like, I don't think they'll do it, but there's a good possibility. Now the possibilities are in the realm of when they're gonna start pulling the bricks. What's next to make the grand fall off? We're in the fall off era of Roman at this point. So we'll have to see, man. It's all about consequences. The storyline has to have some consequences.
So you mentioned fall off, and we got some comments about the potential Jey Uso versus Roman Reigns match if Roman accepts. Do people believe that this is the end of the story?
I don't think so. This thing has to end with Cody Rhodes pinning in 1, 2, 3. At least in my opinion, it has to. I don't see them putting the belt on Jay, even though if they decided to do that, you know what? I would still love it. Because the beautiful thing about, especially when we saw that match in Money in the Bank, as they are with family, they've been planning out that match since they were kids in their living room. Can you imagine wrestling your cousin and jumping off the lazy boy and elbow drop, using pillows for chairs, and now you're playing this out in front of a worldwide audience? Do I think he could put his cousin over? Possibly, but I don't know if everybody creative would go for it. I think the plan is still to have Cody be the one,
and that's where my curiosity lies. Nikki says not the end, but a new chapter, and I think that's where a lot of if you want to call them the traditional fans, come in and they say, if you give Jay the title, it's a great story, it's a great angle, but then now what?
Exactly.
Where do you go from there? Will people still show up for it the same way as him challenging for the title?
Exactly. Because who would Jay feud against himself? In a solo run.
2027.
Oh man. So
2027 is nuts.
WWE they've been careful. They know the day that they take the belt off Roman and he goes away for a hot second, like they're gonna have that plan in place. What's next? I know a lot of people, criticize well, what was next for Cody if he would have beat Roman at Mania? Okay. Cody's rivalry with Brock Lesnar to me has been, and I say that because again, there's no consequence. If he would have won the belt at Mania, we have consequences because he would have won the belt. So Lesnar's a kick-ass machine. He doesn't need reasons. You have the title. I want what you want. I want what you have. I'm gonna come get it. Lesnar doesn't need any other motivation than that, And they really still haven't explained why Brock Lesnar keeps fucking up Cody Rhodes. They really still haven't, other than
press the issue on site.
Brock, yeah, good. Yeah, you tell me how that works out. Happy birthday to Brock Lesnar, by the way. But still, but no, I'm just like when he took him out the Raw after Mania, there's got to be consequences. I know I talk about that a lot when I'm on this show about storyline drives championships, but that's the point I'm trying to make. There has to be reason. And there hasn't been a reason for it. I just feel like you could have had that rivalry we could have gotten Cody as a champ and Brock Lesnar feuding for the belt and still had the bloodline feud. We still could have gotten this. Now, obviously, Roman would have ate the pin sooner, but I still think the impact of the storyline still would have held up. Because, sometimes you don't need titles to push a feud. What's grander than a blood feud, But, what do I know? We're just two guys on the internet.
Well, that rivalry to me, now it feels like Cody wants smoke with Brock more so than the other, even though since Brock started it. But I feel like Brock's one of those guys that's the bully on the playground and can just pick a fight with anybody. It doesn't have to
Right.
make sense. But like back to like this Seth and Roman thing, because a lot of people there are people who love the bloodline story. There are people who are waiting for it to end. I remember a comment I saw on a YouTube video, one of his return videos, and it said that John Cena is the epitome of "you'll miss me when I'm gone." We know that there's a pending break for Roman. He even dropped in this promo last week. He has 5 kids at home. These are young kids too. So if Roman takes another one of those breaks like he did before, will it be more of his aura being missed on Friday nights, or will things move along like business as usual?
There's hard to replace. I mean, WWE has spent so much time trying to get Roman Reigns over. They've tried every way, and they finally made it happen with this bloodline feud. So he deserves that pause. He's had the titles for that many days. He's carried a company on his back for this many days, this many years. It's going to be an extended break. I don't, you know what? Part of me, now that I'm talking out loud and thinking about this, do they have a what's next plan? Do you think they've tried to figure it out and they just haven't come to pass? Maybe that's why they haven't told Roman, you know what? Thank you for your service. We got it from here. Go take a vacation as you deserve. We're thinking maybe, we don't know. It's hard to replace something like that. It's hard to replace a big storyline like that. So
as much as people are unhappy with the finale of WrestleMania, I'm telling you, like that, to me, if it would have went the other way, it would have sunk very fast.
So you thinking if the bloodline would have completely fallen off at Mania, you don't think it had been complete loss of momentum from now?
Me personally, I feel like the Cody thing would have been cool for like the rest of the summer, and then by SummerSlam most fans would have been over it.
Possibly, or it could have been the grand fall off. The Usos and Roman take a couple months off, and they come back just wrecking fucking everybody. Like, we want our shit back. Could have been that. That was the way I kind of looked at it. Like, they just disappear off TV for 4 or 5 months, and you don't see them until maybe Survivor Series, or even SummerSlam would be the earliest. And they come in like a bat out of hell, just wrecking everybody. Like, we want our shit back. If they would have kept the bloodline together. So that was a possibility I thought of. But, also got to look at what Triple H is trying to do, trying to unbook kind of what Vince has set forward for the last couple of years. And now Vince kind of back in the mix now of booking. We don't know what the conversation is backstage. We're just this is rumors and innuendo, but we got to see how this plays out, man. But they have a lot of work to do in terms of trying to figure out what is next and when to pull the trigger.
I agree. The saying in the chat saying that he likes the story, or they like the storytelling that WWE's doing with Bianca Belair.
Yes, very much so.
It's like a slow burn too. Like, we're not getting it all at once. It's like building over a series of weeks. Right.
But also we've been around, we're old enough to have been around the days of slow storytelling. We need it now, we need it fast, we get it. But it's also, you don't want to miss the moment, because timing is everything. Timing is everything. And I just hope whenever they pull the trigger, we didn't miss the moment where it could have impacted more. So timing is everything, so we have to see.
All right, what we got next?
What do we have next? So Trinity recently said in an interview that she's open to potentially doing something on screen with Mercedes Mone. If it makes sense, I think we're going to see them link up eventually. They're both, independent at this point. Trinity's at Impact, and of course with Mercedes being at New Japan and Stardom, and of course those two promotions do work together. It's eventual, they're going, we're going to see them link up again. Something interesting in that interview, she touches on that when they left WWE, the people that checked in, And also that we'll never, like most people won't know the full story. And at this point, I don't think we'll ever get the full story till maybe years down the line, if it does come out. But whatever it happened, it led them on this path of we're just going to go do our own thing. But I think they have each other's back enough and love each other enough they're going to do business eventually. We're going to see that, whether it's opponents, whether it's as tag team partners, we're going to see it again soon for them.
Yeah, I agree. And, which I think you were just mentioning in the interview, she said when everything was kind of on the outs for them with all that debacle at WWE, she said they had each other like no other. They just had each other's back, but also people that are checking in regular, people you might the usual suspects, Tamina and Bailey. That quote itself kind of breaks my heart because it makes it seem on the outside that not too many people was really like riding for them in that situation. Not too many people was like, hey, I got your back if anything goes wrong. Do you need anything? What can we do to help? Just literally a couple. And that's sad when you think about that. And she also says that she'll always do what's best for her and Mercedes. If something makes sense for the both of them, then she wouldn't want to do it with anybody else. So I think it's a really strong possibility that they will work together or they'll team together at some point. And I think it'll be a very big moment if they ever do.
It's got to happen. Given how everything is planned out, it's got to happen. And also, everybody's been in a situation at a job where, it may be for job security, you're trying to keep to yourself and stay out of the business. Or on the low, maybe they couldn't mention that X, Y, and Z was checking in on them, so they wouldn't have any kind of, heat with management. Maybe they did that out of protection. We don't know that either. So, and we also don't know, maybe a lot of women in the locker room felt the exact same way. They just, again, for job security, didn't want to come out and say it. So, we'll have to see. We'll have to see how it pans out. But I think for real, we're going to see them eventually, in a crazy world, we've talked about this before. People have come back to WWE under less crazier circumstances. Their walkout is the least craziest thing that a lot of people that have returned to that company has done. Theirs had to do with the job, not some other shit on the side. Maybe it wasn't them, a DUI. It wasn't them fighting someone in a bar. It wasn't some kind of other controversy that would get them caught up in something. It was a work-related, we always hear the term creative differences all the time. That was creative differences, so because, and I think that there's a level of respect for them they're going to have to respect because they stood up for themselves. What top guy or girl do you know in this business that ever made it to the top that didn't stick up for themselves?
Very true.
Closed mouths don't get fed in the wrestling business.
Very true. Yeah, I think it'll eventually happen. Even if it doesn't happen this year, they're both on very successful runs right now. Obviously, Mercedes coming back from an injury. I think we'll see it within the next year. And when it does, it'll be like all over the internet, reshared across all platforms, be like a very big deal.
Right. And again, especially more so in Mercedes' case, because we don't know the contract negotiations, where it was for Trinity, but we do know, Mercedes or Sasha wanted X amount of money. They didn't think she was worth the contract. She was, so you think after what I've given this company, wasn't enough for a mainline contract? Well, I took that personally, like Michael Jordan. I'm gonna go outside and build my brand up even more and show why you should have gave me that contract that I asked for. So it's a chip on her shoulder as well. We know Sasha is a very hard worker and she loves this, and she's always wanted to prove people wrong. That's not just part of her character on screen. That's her personality. So, but we'll have to see. Like I said, I think they're going to go on their runs independently. We may see them, and I think at one point we're going to see them in WWE again. I seriously doubt we're going to see them in AEW, though. I don't see that. I could be wrong. I could be 100% wrong. We don't know what Tony Khan is working on backstage, but right now I'd put money on them appearing back in WWE than going to AEW. Although the women's division of AEW would benefit huge if they went there.
Yeah. So Saturday, I believe, is upcoming Slammiversary. We got our press pass and we got notes available from her press scrum available now. Check that out.
Yes, sir.
might have a Freudian slip there. We meant Mercedes. We meant Mercedes. We don't know who Sasha is. We meant Mercedes.
Niggas like, who is Sasha? We all.
This is true, and that speaks to her star power. Mercedes got
Right.
New Japan to create 2 women's titles for her and the women's division, so
It's real.
speaks to her trailblazing in that promotion and in that market as well.
I just hope and pray she just stays healthy. That's my only big thing with her. Please, she stays healthy.
I feel like that was just Tony. We talked about this before. I feel like that was just Tony, more so maybe using a small text thread and making it more than what it was about her being in talks for Forbidden Door. But who knows? Who knows how those conversations really go?
Right. Well, Tony has a 50-50 poker face. Sometimes you can tell what he's talking about, and sometimes you can't, for better or for worse. So, but like any good showman, he's gonna play it up as he should. You want to create interest in people tuning in. So of course he's gonna drum the beat a little bit and go, maybe not.
Exactly. Moving on to the big screen, Drew McIntyre has been cast in a new action film titled The Killer's Game. He'll be starring alongside the likes of Dave Bautista and Ice Cube. Very interesting thing. The funnel of WWE to Hollywood and the big screen. Drew is obviously the latest name. I don't know if he really had acting aspirations as where he'll do it full time, like The Rock or Batista, but that funnel is very much alive. So what do you think about that?
You know what? It goes hand in hand, man. Wrestling, and I mean, since the rock and roll connection, I mean, even before that, getting back to Andy Kaufman, wrestling and Hollywood are hand in hand. It's always going to be that connection. There's always going to be crossover. I tell you what, though, after reading the synopsis, the synopsis of the story of this movie, Drew McIntyre is perfect for a movie like this. It's based on a 97 novel. So basically, Batista plays this hitman who finds out he's terminally ill with cancer, and he's a trained assassin. He's like, you know what? I can't take myself out, so I'm going to pay a bunch of assassins to take me out. Turns out his diagnosis was absolutely wrong, and he's completely healthy. Now he's got to fight off all these assassins to stay alive, he and his girl. So just looking at kind of the grindhouse, grimy kind of like visually, big dudes, big guns, kick-ass flick. Drew McIntyre is going to fit right in this flick. And Batista, this is going to be dope. I think it's going to be really dope.
You just sold me on it. Man. So maybe all the little contract controversy was really nothing, and he was like,
could be
auditions.
It could be. It shocked me, especially after the great match he had at Mania, that they were. I do not, especially because look, Drew's left before. Drew has walked that path before. He left. They released him. He built himself back up, came back. I don't see him leaving again. I really don't. After I don't know. I just feel like he's proven so much within the WWE after coming back, after walking that path. I really don't see them letting him go again. I just don't. I could be wrong. Stranger things have happened, but I just don't see that happening. They're going to make a deal with him, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I feel like they have a foundation where he's a pivotal character to the brand, and any part of the card. See him working a program with Gunther right now.
Right.
Almost, and I agree with some people that might feel like he's above the Intercontinental title, but he's a reputable name that you just want on the card, especially when you're building up for SummerSlam. That would be a great match regardless.
Hey man, it is. We're gonna call that the Big E special, the big meaty men slapping meat special. That is the Big E special, man. Because someone's gonna get chopped to high heaven in that match.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to bring this up next as our next topic, because there's a lot of news swirling about Bray Wyatt and what is happening, what's not happening. But Undertaker recently shared some thoughts on his current WWE run and what could possibly work with him. We know Bray was supposed to be at Mania 39. Didn't happen with Bobby Lashley. And he said Undertaker was recently on with Alistair McGeorge of Metro and shared his feelings on this current run of him being back. And he said they need to be go back to Bray's character, up to the original character, and get away from. They've kind of got themselves booked a situation where it's kind of difficult for him to have matches. I think the original Wyatt family Bray, that's the money. I got to work with Bray at Mania after the year after I got concussed in the Brock match. I work with Bray, I think, a lot of them. And I like what he's doing. I think they just have to figure out they need to back it up, I think. His promos and his ability to work. He's an incredible, incredible worker, but he's not getting an opportunity to do it. I hope the best for him. I really do think a lot of him, and we'll see what happens there. Now, the lead here is let's flash back to the beginning and start over with, I like to call it Gospel Bray. And Gospel Bray being the money character. So do they, and I've liked every iteration of Bray because there's something that we haven't seen before, some little nuggets, obviously the White Rabbit thing that led into what we got. I feel like there's still a story to be told, but him being off TV this long, I think he's still not cleared yet. Should they just reboot it all together and go back?
No, and that we're never going to see that character again. And the main reason that is God rest Brody Lee. I don't think we're going to see that again because that character, that fellowship that they all had, you're missing a vital piece. And because of that, that's one of the reasons why I don't think we're going to get that character again. But Taker was right in that, that character was money. And I just remember there was a running joke between my sister and I during that time that Bray just was on a losing streak. Like anytime he would start walking out with that slow dun, 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 she starts singing losing streak because he would lose every single match. And it made me think about his main roster debut, SummerSlam 2013. I was at that match. He fought Kane in Inferno match. And by the way, if you get a chance, go back and watch that 2013 SummerSlam card. Like the banger of a card. Like I forgot. I was there and I forgot how much of a banger it was. You had the pre-show. You ready? The pre-show was Rob Van Dam versus Moxley for the U.S. title with Roman Reigns interfering to cost, Moxley the match, but Van Dam gets the win, via disqualification. You had Cody Rhodes and Damian Zandoff. You had Natalya and Brie Bella. You had Lesnar versus CM Punk. You had Cena versus Daniel Bryan, and of course Randy Orton cashing in on him. Like I was like, damn, this was a banger of a show. Now, if you think about it, but I don't know what they're going to do with Bray. I have no idea. They've given him the ball to let him do what he wanted. Has it worked fully? The Mountain Dew pitch black match will have to have a word with you.
They should. So that's. Says bad booking. That's an example of bad booking, though. It's like,
let me be clear.
That should have been a cinematic match. It should not have been in the arena for fans to see. It should have been a cinematic match. Everybody would have loved it.
I want Bray Wyatt to win. Let's be clear. I want him to win. I want Bray Wyatt to win. I don't know if creative not having enough faith in him. I don't know if he's just in his head, like maybe it's working, maybe it's not working. I don't know, man. They got to settle on an idea with him and just go. Because I feel like there's a lot of overthinking with Bray's character, with everything he does, because he's so meticulous. And to his own credit, and maybe to his own detriment, he's so meticulous with every part of his story, every part of his character. I want him to win, but they've got to. We don't even know what the medical issue is to this day. We don't know if it's physical, whether he's just mentally dealing with some stuff. We don't know. We don't know what's happening with Bray. But all I know is I hope they figure it out, and I want him to win. Because he came back hot. He came back in red hot. And we're like, he's finally going to get the run. He's got this money character, and the Wyatt 6 still hasn't played out. We still are thinking Uncle Howdy was Bo Dallas, and it never was confirmed. They never paid that part of the story off. So I don't think going back to the Bayou Bray is gonna help, even though I don't think we're ever gonna see that character again. And then also, do you pull Braun Strowman back in there if you're gonna pull that stable back together?
You could. I mean, that's what made me think about it. The last time I recall seeing the Gospel Bray character was in their pandemic match when Braun was briefly the Universal Champion. He kind of played that back in that feud right there. But I mean, the Firefly Funhouse Bray was just as good. I mean, if Cena was able to put that over with the Firefly Funhouse match, then there's so many iterations that can work. And I know in the wrestling world, we always say just give it time to develop. I think this is one of those cases where a lot more patience will allow us to get the payoff we're looking for. Because with Bray, it's not going to be a simple thing. And I think people point to the in-ring matches or lack thereof and not being banger matches. But like I'm not going to say he's not a workhorse or anything like that. He can go in the ring a little bit.
Right.
But he's always been a storyteller. And I think people are looking towards SummerSlam. And I think that might be, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, y'all. When Roman first came back from his remission and attacked Bray, as well as Strowman in that match, was that a pandemic SummerSlam?
Yes, it was. You're absolutely right.
Okay,
he didn't win. He didn't win the title to the next month at Payback, but that's when he came in and just wrecked everyone and left, as the T-shirt says.
Exactly. Okay, so people are speculating that Bray could return at that, which it wouldn't be a bad thing. But I'll give you a better one. Like, what if on the road of this Cody's being this hard time store? What if Bray just randomly gets in Cody's way, same way Brock Lesnar did?
If they're gonna do Cody, it can't be none of the voodoo shit. No, not with Cody.
It's just supposed to be a distraction.
No, like it's. I just don't see it working. I could be 100% wrong. They may make it work, but looking what happened with LA Knight, I don't see it working. I don't know what they're going to do. Go back. Like they had a money character with the Fiend. They had a money character with the Fiend, and he died in Hell in a Cell. I mean, you can say that the end of that obviously was the WrestleMania match. You know, it was against Randy when Alexa Bliss came out. What was it? Was it a cake? I can't remember now. It wasn't a cake. It was like the big top hat.
I know what you're talking about. It wasn't a cake. That's
the top hat.
You got me really thinking if it's a cake. No, it wasn't. It
was like a top hat. It was something.
It was like some platform.
It was a platform, and that was officially the end of that character. But the Hell in a Cell match with Seth was the end of the road for that character, and they all know that. Bray has just unfortunately been a victim of bad booking. If they want to swerve everybody, he needs to come back like his daddy and be like the son of IRS or something like that. I don't know. That would be the ultimate swerve of it all, but that would never happen.
I don't know. That stuff used to always pop me, man. Alexa Bliss throwing fireballs will always be heat to me.
Literally.
Like that was always fun to me. And I feel like there's a lot more you can do with the Bray Wyatt character. You bring up the Wyatt Six, and I think people were speculating. And there were so many fan theories about who's in it and what is it and all this. And it could have just been like 6 split personalities, just kind of like the movie Split. That's what I was thinking.
Or like on some D12 shit, 6 MCs. Everyone's got an alter ego.
That's what I was thinking. So maybe they just go right back into it. I mean, Bray's been off TV. Bobby's been off TV.
Yeah, where's Bobby? Has Bobby just been hurt, or I've missed that one?
Just off.
Just needed time off, as he should.
Just off. Let's get to one more thing before we get up out of here. You mentioned this earlier. Happy birthday to both Brock Lesnar and Sami Zayn. Very unique pairing to share a birthday today on July 12th. But birthday shout outs are in order. Really big run this year for Sami Zayn, of course, with everything going on. Becoming undisputed tag team champions with his best friend, Brock Lesnar, in the midst of a feud with Cody. Moving. And you know what? There's another article. We'll probably don't have enough time to get through. Omos recently did a podcast where he's giving a lot of praise to Brock Lesnar for his knowledge of the business, as well as his poise, knowing his way around the ring, also knowing how to sell. Brock Lesnar sells his ass off when he wants to. When he respects you, he sells his ass off. And I do think that gets understated in the wrestling circles.
Lesnar is the last of that kind of old school kind of like came up in that era of, if I like you and respect you, I'm going to put you over type. And if I don't, I'm not going to. Very much kind of like what Andre the Giant used to do. You're right, because Lesnar is a underrated seller. that man will flop like a fish if he wants to get you over, man. Like the way he used to jump over the top rope when he gets hit with some kind of drop kick, especially during he still does it now, but especially during the Ruthless Aggression era. Oh my God, the man was like someone put moon shoes on his boots, man. But no, Lesnar, you know what? I know we as fans, sometimes give Lesnar a lot of blowback, the part-time schedule, et cetera. But when it all comes down to it, Lesnar's a stud. He's paid his dues. He's a freak of nature. He's at classic matches. He gets it. And I think with him, when he, like you said, when he likes somebody, he'll get younger talent over. Like, I think we all were like, Omos, really? Like, nobody saw that coming, that he was going to have this feud into Mania with Omos. And him, Omos going against Lashley prepped him for that. So, you got to give credit where credit is due. He was helping trying to get a young star over, because there was times where Omos, it was like, where does Omos fit into the picture? People forget, like, that man started as Shane McMahon's bodyguard on Raw Underground, and now he's fighting Lesnar at Mania. Like, that's a come-up story. Think about that. Like, that's an amazing come-up story. So, Lesnar is a once in a generation talent. Like I said, you got to give the man credit. And Sammy, what can we not say about Sammy at this point, man? That's the feel good story of wrestling this year, without question. Well deserved.
Well deserved. And a lot of people kind of forgot with this whole Bloodline storyline. What if they do go back and Sammy's the one to pay everything off? They can kind of swerve us and go back right around there, because ever since winning the Undisputed Tag titles, he's still been in Jay's ear almost every week. So that they might just go that route. There's still a lot to be told in this storyline, and I agree with people who feel like that it's not ending anytime soon. That it'll just be a different layer of how it's being told.
The Bloodline story is not going to end till at the very earliest Mania, and that's the earliest. I think we'll see maybe the finale of this whole thing. And he may come back to it, a couple years later, but I think this initial storyline, that we're all going to look back on as one of the greatest, I think Mania, they're gonna push it to Philly, and that's when we're gonna see some kind of finale.
I agree. Well, we gotta get up out of here. I want to thank everybody in the chat for joining us today. Nikki, Joseph, Ron, JD, The Saying.
Shouts out.
Thank you guys for joining us, giving your feedback. We got a lot of shows you want to check out. We got a lot of after shows that you want to check out. So I'm gonna play the commercial in a second. But before we get up out of here, Chuck, let them know where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram at the Old Soul HFP. Check out my group Honor Flow Productions. We got a dope album out called The Black Odyssey. You can check out our music videos, our documentary about our tour in Japan on our YouTube channel as well. So yeah, at the Old Soul HFP, honorflowproductions.com. Check us out.
And then my name is Cedric. You can find me on Twitter at says at CEDD_SAYS. I'm on the Threads thing, as well as Instagram at Said Is The Answer. You can check out my writing for dailyddt.com. Again, this is Women's Wrestling Talk, WWT Live Wednesday edition, the #1 source for women's wrestling information. We thank you for joining us. We'll see you guys on Friday.
Peace.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.